meet you. My name is Steven Renza. As Madison explained, I'm the creative director here for the boutique. Basically, what that means is I design and have produced a collection of articles that we offer at the boutique, which is in the garden. I'd like to explain a little bit, share a little bit of my background, how I came here, my inspiration, and the philosophy behind the products that we create. I'm American. I studied at NYU Film School. While I was a student, I was a photo stylist. I was actually the first photo stylist represented by a major agency in the United States. And I was working on primarily fashion advertising. As soon as I finished my studies, I went to Paris and went to work for a small industrial design firm. We did many, many different things. I was originally hired to work on communications, but very early I realized that what interested me was the product development design process. And with the help of the founders of that agency, after a few months I started working on product briefs. So we did very different things for very different kinds of clients: perfume bottles for Saint-Gobain, cooking utensils for Le Creuset, toothbrushes, furniture for Japanese hotels, etc. I stayed with them for about 5 years, and over that 5-year period, I was very interested, and maybe once or twice a year I would go to Southeast Asia, and I was very interested in having an experience there. So in 1990, I was offered a job for Habitat, which is a French-UK homeware company, and I opened a design office for them in Hanoi. I stayed there for 3 years and developed and had products produced. After a few years, it was time to go home, and I decided that would be Paris. In Paris, I got a job directing the buying offices for Neiman Marcus, Bergdorf Goodman, which I did for 3 years. After that, I went off to work for the Richemont Group, which is the world's second largest luxury group. I was originally hired as the accessories director for Alfred Dunhill, and after 2 years, I was nominated international creative director for the brand. In here, I will start, and my introduction to Morocco was through Fez. 20 years ago, I visited Fez after some dental surgery and left, it really wasn't a strategy, but I left buying a property. I was the first non-Moroccan to buy a traditional house in the Medina of Fez. And as I said, it was really my introduction to Morocco. It took me several years to restore the property, which I did myself, and I worked directly with artisans. And that's how I became enamored with the country. And that's really how I learned about Moroccan culture and about Moroccan decorative arts as well. So there you have some photographs of my home. And after that 3-year process, I actually did another property, which is today a restaurant. There you have it. Okay. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about Fez. We have a few minutes of imagery here, but what I want to express is the feeling that Fez evoked for me. So writers over the centuries have talked about, they've all had the same thing to say about Fez, from the 16th century to contemporary writers like Edith Wharton or Anais Nin, and basically the time stands still there. Fez for me is really the story of Morocco as well. It's considered the architectural monuments there, the craftsmanship, the decorative arts are really the summit of the country. But what's very interesting for me about Fez, but about for the country itself, and people don't always realize, is that Morocco is a Mediterranean basin country. And long before the Arabs came from the Arabian Peninsula, there were changes with the Byzantines, the Romans, the Greeks. The indigenous people, the Amazigh or Berbers, are a culture that are at least 5,000 years old. There were exchanges and trade routes with sub-Saharan Africa. There are many, many, many different influences. And for me, Fez is a wonderful example of the convergence of all these different influences and culture. And they result in a style that is singularly Moroccan. Now, I'll read you a short text about the history of Fez. It is the most ancient of the Moroccan imperial capitals and the most complete medieval city of the Arab world. The development of Fez took place at the beginning of the 9th century when Idris II established, excuse me. I'm sorry. Yes, when he established it as his capitals and allowed refugees from two far-flung corners of the Western Islam, Andalusian Cordoba in Spain and Kirwan in Tunisia, to settle there. Basically, what I find the most interesting is that already from the 9th century, the inhabitants included Moors, Berbers, Jews, Turks, Christians. We'll continue. This is Marrakesh. Now, my connection with Marrakesh started when I came here. I was offered a job by Madison and the late Pierre Berger. I had met Pierre Berger when I was working for Bergdorf Goodman and Neiman Marcus. And it's very interesting. Every city in Morocco has a very distinct flavor. And they really have nothing to do with each other. Fez is very inward-looking, intellectual, very Moroccan. Marrakesh is very open, international, modern. So I came here, and the idea was to put into place a proper concept that reflected local culture in developing products for the boutique. Later, and the most important part of the presentation will really be the products themselves. Here we have some imagery of Jardin Majorelle. So Jardin Majorelle was started by the French Orientalist painter Jacques Majorelle in 1924. In the mid-30s, he put into place this color scheme that you see there with a bright cobalt blue, which became known as Majorelle blue, and primary colors throughout. He was actually, at the time, as known for his garden as he was for his paintings and illustrations. Now, the influence of here we have the Berber Museum. The Berber Museum is located inside the garden, and the indigenous people, the Amazigh or Berbers, this is really a homage to them. It is a collection of artifacts, costumes, and a very spectacular presentation of Berber jewelry. The museum that we're in now contains a temporary gallery, a specialized bookshop, and most importantly, the permanent collection, which is the creation of Yves Saint Laurent. Yves Saint Laurent, Yves Saint Laurent was raised in colonial French Algeria, and he credits Morocco with the strong sense of color. Pierre Berger believed that Morocco is what influenced his color sense and made him one of the finest colorists in the world. Okay, here we have craftsmen working. These are actually Escher. Escher I find very interesting because he was greatly inspired by Islamic art. And for me, his process reflects what I do. He looked at Islamic art, he dissected it, destructured it, and put it back together again. This is the same thing. This is really the design process that I use. But I also look at the process behind. So I'm always looking at not only embellishment, but also techniques and taking them apart, kind of like an onion, layer after layer, removing them, and then seeing how I can juxtapose. I'm really looking to get to the essence of something. I look at the design elements, and I see how I can put them back together again. Okay, now we'll look at some of the products. This I find the most interesting. This is a snake that Saint Laurent painted on their first home in the late 60s here, called the House of the Serpent. And I think it's pretty obvious. You can see that we've used the snake in many different ways. So here we have some jewelry. Here, embroidery on leather. Here, this is an enamel technique cloisonné, which is the only one that's used in North Africa. The zigzag pattern is an Amazir pattern. I think it's clear where it comes from. Here, this is a traditional style Amazir or Berber earring. I think you can understand where the inspiration, the graphic is coming from. This is from a poster. Saint Laurent every year would make posters that he sent to his friends. All of our products must reflect local culture or botanics. This clearly is botanical. But everything reflects either the Amazigh culture or Islamic art, Morocco. What we're trying to do is to really make a terroir product, a product that feels like it comes from and reflects local culture. Again, the philodendron. Here we have an earring, obviously from the blossom. The little filigree technique is local. Another botanical inspiration. Here's a very short video of a jeweler. We work with a fourth generation Amazigh family that we produce all over Morocco. This is in Tiznit, which is near Agadir and is the silversmithing capital of Morocco. These techniques really haven't changed for hundreds and hundreds of years. The enamel technique comes from Middle Asia. and it's something that we use often. Okay, see. What's wonderful about our little boutique is that we're able to work with associations, small family enterprises, and most of what we do includes a lot of handwork, but it's always local. Here we have a handmade Berber chain. Again, it's really streamlining, and you can see I've put it on a leather cord, and it's a very streamlined, but the technique is a technique that's really existed for hundreds and hundreds of years. We have another where I've respected the technique but put it onto a bracelet. This is actually done on a dowel of wood. So the silver wire is worked on a piece of wood that is then removed. Very well-known photograph. Coins were used in Berber culture for jewelry for centuries. I hope that what you see is we've taken, this is a Berber hand of Fatima. It also forms an M, which we especially like because of Majorat. What we're trying to do there is to make modern products that genuinely reflect local culture, but they're not ethnic products. Something that a woman could take back to Tokyo or New York or London and feel comfortable wearing. This is a henna design that we've translated into silver jewelry. This was actually one of the sales associates in the shop who came in one day with this on her hand. Here we have Matisse leaves that Saint Laurent in the early 80s put on his dresses. We've used this local cloisonné technique and translated into earrings. We've also done some bracelets. There you are. This is very interesting. It's Mongol. I didn't realize that. I found it in India after I had already found this design as a 16th century. It was used in the 16th century here. But when I was in North India, I took a picture of this door and did a little research and found out that it took 3 centuries before it made its way to Morocco. We do a lot of embroidery on lambskin with Islamic arts motifs. This is what we call a poof bag. It was inspired by poofs that I saw in the Medina, stacked. We have a picture of them a little later. Here's another bag. Obviously, it's embroidered with a bamboo motif. One of my product managers actually took photos of the bamboo in our garden, and we transposed it onto this bag. Here, obviously, it's the same bamboo inspiration. This is embroidered onto a cotton pillow. We have a small workshop across the street with 5 people doing clothing. So the shapes are very simple, Moroccan, and this one, the back, of course, is inspired with a Moroccan motif. All of our embroidery is done by a nonprofit women's cooperative. Here, a little pyramid-shaped bag. The graphic, of course, is a pyramid, but really where the idea came from was just the basic geometric shape that we find in Islamic arts. Here's another. Here we've translated this. This was a stone inlay, and we've translated it as a little purse, woven leather. This is the poof I was talking about. It's the same bag. You saw it photographed from above. These stacked poofs gave us the idea to do this. And it's actually our best-selling bag, most popular. Here you have a short video of people producing ostrich skin babouche. Ostriches originated here and further south in Mauritania. The Moroccans gave feathers, then skins, then live animals to the French and the English introduced them to South Africa, which is today the largest producer of ostrich. Here they were hunted to extinction. There is only one ostrich farm, which is near Rabat. That's where we buy our skins. The skins, tanning ostrich is very particular. The skins are then sent to Italy and tanned. They come back, and then they're made into these handmade babouche. Everything in our shop, even if it's cryptic, relates to the history or relates to Morocco. What's wonderful is that these crafts are still very much alive. And for us, we are not... Here you have other ostrich babouche for ladies. The motif is Amazigh. You can see it tattooed on this young woman. What I wanted to say is that we're not particularly concerned about price. We're really looking to make the finest quality available. And for many things, there are not many people who produce this kind of a product. Here, I think it's obvious. This is also a graphic element of our logo. Here, it's a little box bag. Here, it's a leather-covered box. Here, back to Saint Laurent's posters. Love is the one that we use the most. Here we've taken it and embroidered it on a leather cushion, on a pair of handmade babouche. A hand-woven chenille throw. A small clutch bag. These are small enamel earrings. A cloisonné bracelet. Hand-woven, very fine wool scarf. This particular scarf, there are 36 families that continue to weave. Here, the ostrich egg, which of course connects to the ostrich, as I explained earlier. Here's an ostrich bag. This little detail comes from an Amazigh sculpture. here we have it in lambskin. Another Amazir utensil that inspired us to do this bag. The motif is an Amazir motif. We've translated into studs. Here, a 17th century little leather pouch. We make a variety of these. Ours is with lapis and vintage Amazir beads with a small lapis lazuli detail. We do many of them as one of a kind. Here, the reference is obvious. In a little leather bag with an embroidered water lily. Okay, now I think that I've left a good block of time for questions and answers. I think that would maybe be the most interesting. Please.
How do you discover the artisans that you work with to create these items? Is it just through discovery, or do you have...
I'm always actively looking. So, for example, we do a lot of business with leather, and I visited over 100 tanneries in Fez. And the one that I found works exclusively they export, all of their production is exported to Italy. We're the only people who use them. But it really is through trial and error, or through different ways. The very thin wool is actually, there are 36 families who make this. And it's something that I saw, it's only really used in Fez as a kind of over djellaba. It's very fine. In my travels, seeing that, it took a while to find out where it was produced, but yes, I'm always looking out for new people who can produce different things. Please.
Related to the artisans, do they, after you find them, do they still make products for other local businesses as well?
They do. I really try to become the best client for lots of these people. And we have very nice working relationships. Also because, and this is personal, but I think that, I don't know if you've had a chance to discover much of Morocco or to walk through the souks. Have you gone through the souks or not? Okay. I think that most Moroccans are producing to a price. They're looking to make, you see a lot of sameness, and they're very, very price conscious. I don't think that that's really, well, it doesn't pertain to us because we're looking to do the finest quality, and we're looking to offer an excellent price-quality ratio, but we're not particularly focused on price. So these handmade babouches, I'm not worried one can buy a babouche for $5. Huh? Ours are $150 for the silk embroidered lambskin, or $300 for the ostrich. And the price is not really the problem. I think we're the only people who actually do a product like that. And my experience has been that artisans are delighted to be able to do that kind of work. And in the end, I think not only are they working on high quality, beautiful products, but I think they put more of themselves into it, and they're much prouder of that. And I also feel that we're allowing the savoir-faire to continue. Here, we're going back to products. I'm sorry, I thought we were finished with this. This is a brocade. And the person on the right, we couldn't find brocade. This is the last brocade maker in the entire country in Fez. So we embroidered it on leather. This is the embroidery workshop that we use. It's a nonprofit. And later, when you visit the boutique, you can see the work that they're doing there. The last collection, we took a lot of precious beads, so little rubies and emeralds, and we trimmed the clothing with them. And I think we have a few images of women working on things like this. The thing is that there is not a huge demand for such high quality craftsmanship here. But what's interesting is that we only have one little boutique, but since we've implemented this strategy, we don't need a whole lot of clients, but we've had a wonderful reaction. I think you can see the connection with the simple shapes.
Oh, I don't need a microphone.
Hi, just a question. When you sell these products, do you share sort of the story behind it? I mean, we're privileged enough for you to share this with us now, but when you sell them, do you share what the inspiration was to give respect to where you found it?
Very much so, very much so. So the sales associates in the boutique, my process, as I'm working on something, from the conception, when I have an idea, I talk to the people in the shop and I explain to them what I'm doing. Every single person that produces for us has come to our studio and to our shop and has explained to the people who work in the shop what's behind it. And every step of the way, my little studio is just above the shop. And every step I go down and I show them and I ask their opinion. In the beginning, they were very surprised that I'd be asking their opinion. And now, when I'm not happy with it, I say, I'm not happy with this, and why are we not happy? And they'll say, because we don't like apparent stitching, or the closure isn't good enough, or it's not aligned perfectly, etc. And they really understand. But every single artisan has been through and talked to the sales associates. So they really become, depending on their personal preferences too, but they've become real specialists. I have one guy who loves jewelry and knows all about it and is very interested in lapidary and stones, and one young woman who has actually spent time in the clothing workshop and has become really, specialized.
And then they share that information with the buyer or the customer?
With the customer, yeah. And actually, in doing this, because I've never done a presentation like this, so you're the first people. You'll have to excuse my awkwardness, but actually, this little presentation was put together by people in my studio, and they're just behind you. Thank you. This gave us the idea, by doing this little product inspiration, to put small screens in the shop. And now we're going to be working on that, because I think that we have an international clientele, and I think visually it's very obvious where these things come from, and that could also help initiate a dialogue between the sales associates and the clients.
Yeah, it's just so, I think, important.
It's very important.
To understand the genesis of the idea.
Exactly, because sometimes, and you can see that some of the things are very cryptic, I mean, this fabric, there are 36 families who weave this fabric. It is known as the royal fabric. It's very, very sheer, and it's used as an over djellaba, man's robe, for feast days. And I saw that the only place I've ever seen it was in Fez, and pretty much on old men and on feast days. And I thought, what a beautiful fabric, but I don't know that there's really an international clientele for an over djellaba, transparent over djellaba. And yeah, I have these woven into lengths, into scarf lengths, and then we send them off, and we have them, they're indigo dyed, and then they're hand embroidered. One needs to know what that is. Otherwise, it's a scarf. And also, the price is reflected too. That hand-woven, very fine wool, hand-embroidered scarf is a $200 scarf. Once people understand what it is, people are very happy to buy it, but they need to know what it is. Please.
I'm curious how the architecture and the design of the museum by Studio Co. has inspired some of your work or the presentation of the pieces and the boutique.
That's interesting because I don't. For me, I was the shop existed before the museum, so I came here 7 years ago. The shop itself was designed by the American Bill Willis, who was a decorator, and who also, he's credited with having revived lots of traditional techniques, Tadillac, etc. And he worked very closely with Yves Saint Laurent, Pierre Berger on their homes. I was actually more inspired by Bill Willis, and the shop he did in the 1980s, and when I came, I redid the shop, but I tried to respect the codes that Bill had designed, and I wanted it to be in harmony with what he originally did. So that was much more my focus. I've done a lot of retail design projects. So I designed the Van Cleef shop in Hong Kong and Fred Leighton on Rodeo Drive and different, and for Dunhill, different shops as well. And I try to reflect really for this shop, I thought it was very, very important that it looked like Bill Willis did it and that I respected, that I just kind of updated and modernized a bit the fixtures. So you'll have a chance. So this is a marvelous building, absolutely marvelous. But Kahlo's inspiration, if I may, I think was more about reflecting Saint Laurent. And I honestly, I don't consider my work, it's not to reflect Saint Laurent. And I don't think that anything that I would do design-wise, I think it would be too derivative, and no. I tried to look at what I imagined he was looking at. So the clothing are really, they're very basic Moroccan shapes, but they're done in fine silks, embroidered, etc. But there are only a couple little clin d'oeil, just a couple of little winks at things like the Matisse flowers, because there's connection also with botanics, but I really stay away from. And the injection of Saint Laurent that I put into that is color. But that was also a big strength of Jacques Majorel in designing the garden. Please.
Since your pieces are so delicate and specific to this area, have you had the buyers come in and have said, you know, expand the
For the moment, it's just here, but we have had, and I feel very flattered. We have had different distributors express their interest in the products, and for me, I mean, we have to see. The thing is that producing these things, some of the garments, for example, a top can take 12 hours of production before it's embroidered. So some of the things are extremely laborious. Nothing is industrialized. So that's, now we're starting to look at putting a select assortment on internet, but something very small and very select. What I find interesting, and I don't know that we're really ready to roll this out around the world, but the fact that we have had interest tells me that these products can speak to people from around the world, because we've had inquiries from Japan, from the United States, from different parts of the world, and yes, I'm very flattered, and I'm very happy. I look very closely at who buys these things, and it really is. We really have an international clientele. What's interesting is that the products resound very well with Americans. But I think that the Americans who are coming to visit Morocco are already very edited. So these are people who are well-traveled, well-educated, and interested in local culture. But they're some of our best clients, and they're people who really understand what we're trying to do. It does vary. So something like that poof bag has become a signature piece. So when I add a new colored leather, we introduce it in leather, and we'll do variations, but it's something that has really become ours, and it's something that we continue. Some things, I do lots of one-offs, lots and lots. You'll see, if you have a chance to visit the boutique, we buy lots of vintage jewelry bits and put them back together, which is also something that Amazir people always did. But I take semi-precious stones and vintage silver bits and make one-of-a-kind necklaces, and we make one-of-a-kind bracelets, but hundreds of them. So it goes from the one-of-a-kind to super small. Those little bags, there was a little pouch bag that had lapis lazuli and vintage, a little Berber motif. We make one-of-a-kind ones with vintage jewelry elements. And we decided to cap that we would make 100 bags, 100 one-of-a-kind bags, and that's it. And then we can move on to something else. So to kind of keep things going, we have a mix. We have a few things that we really that we want to keep. I think we're the only people making handmade babouche slippers, for example. And there's a real story there. That's something that we'll continue with. A couple of the bags have really become signatures for us. We keep them. But we like to also do very small runs and select limited editions. Yeah.
You mentioned that some of the artisans were supporting women's nonprofit organizations. Is that at all a priority for you?
Very much so. Very much so. So I can't have all work done by nonprofit associations, but there was a short film of women embroidering that we've used them since I've been here, and from the time in the past 7 years, there are now 10 times more women embroidering in that association. We recently, for the first time, did something outside of the garden. The Royal Mansour. You went to the Royal Mansour? You spoke to the Royal Mansour? Yes. We had a 1-month pop-up there, and it was to benefit that association. So they're also interested in associative efforts, and we took one of a kind. We did a collection of garments. Each one was totally unique in its embroidery, and we did that for 1 month to promote that association. And the little film there we made a short film that we also presented. And yes, that's what we try to do that. Mostly, we're working with small family-run businesses. And we're also trying to grow the businesses. Half of what we do is leather, and the people that we work with, now we started with just one, and for the first 3 years, we doubled the business every year. And now we're working with a second and a third. But it's a little bit difficult because it's impossible to go to work with artisans who have no structure and can't really produce. So these people, they need to be able to grow with us, and we try to help them as we go along. One of my product managers, Ali, comes from a school for traditional arts, and he's specialized in leather, and he works with them. Yes, we try to work very closely with our suppliers, but we're always the only people I discount are the industrial. So we don't do anything that's industrial.
Sorry, one more. How does your time in New York or even your film studies influence your designs in New York?
That's a very interesting question, because for me, everything connects. So the film studies, I was very passionate about film. But by the time I finished my studies, I had already worked for years. And that, the direction of more fashion was always there, fashion and product development. Years later, when I was a creative director and I was briefing photographers and videographers, etc., I found it very helpful. But I believe, now I'm kind of at the end of my career, but I believe that anything that trains the eye, it's all useful. It's all useful. So fine arts, history of arts, graphics, film, there's a common denominator there. And this one also, I mean, my experience has been very different, but I worked for Dunhill, and Dunhill, the idea was it's a leading brand in Asia, and the idea was to the image of the English gentleman. I mean, but it's very interesting. I'm an American man, hired by a Swiss company to create an image of the English gentleman pretty much for an Asian client. But it's really finding what is the essence and trying to translate that. So I don't think it's that important that what my nationality is. It's me being able to understand what is the essence of that. So what is the essence of Englishness, and what is that for a menswear brand? Habitat was something different because it was democratic. It was the first European democratic design brand. So it doesn't exist in the States, but I suppose it was more of an upscale Pottery Barn type of thing. That was different again because I was respecting Vietnamese techniques. A lot of it was pottery and garden objects and some wood, etc. But it was respecting, but streamlining, recoloring, reproportioning, etc. This for me, it's very cultural. I don't know that there are many cultural institutions that actually design and produce their own products to reflect. There are some museums where the actual artists who are exhibited create products. But I think we're really special in that we're, in what we're trying to do to reflect local culture. But for me, they all connect. They all connect. But, this is also, it's a long career. And I didn't think I saw that in the beginning. But for me, they all really do connect and they feed each other. Please.
I have two quick questions. One, were you involved with the design of the Maison and Gardens for Dunhill on Huaihalu in Shanghai?
I was.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite stores.
Ah, wonderful.
Very beautiful.
Thank you.
And what are the places that sort of inspire and transfix you currently? Where are you inspired to travel next, or what are some of the locations that currently interest you in your design outside of Morocco?
I'm very interested now in Africa. So I know Southeast Asia very well. I spent a few years living in Vietnam before it was opened, and I was always very intrigued by Asia. After, when I worked for Dunhill, I was traveling a lot in developed Asia, so a lot of Japan, Korea, etc. I'm interested in everything, but a part of the world that I don't know is Africa. And I've only been here, and I went to Tanzania. But now I'm really interested. One of my next trips will be to Ethiopia. And so I think it's also a kind of connection to, and a little bit of an exposure here. It's interesting because Morocco, when I first arrived 20 years ago, separated itself. It was the Maghreb. It was not really Africa, and they very much embraced their Africanness. And yes, it's also intrigued me, and yeah, I'm very intrigued by Africa, and I'd like to travel more and to really, have a closer look.
During your time at Dunhill, you distilled kind of the essence of Englishness. And I'm curious on, during your time here, what have you found from your point of view to be the essence of Morocco?
For me, Morocco is really, the Maghreb, this part of Africa is very particular. It was the most western point of the Islamic Empire. But because of its geography, it really is a convergence of different influences and culture, and it has been forever. I think that's what makes Morocco so special. This is the only Arabic-speaking country that not only recognizes but celebrates the influence of Jewish culture. But there's layers and layers. So there's the indigenous people, the Amazigh. There's when Fernando and Isabella expelled the Jews and Muslims from Spain in the 15th century. There was a big boom of artisans who came to Fez. Fez, I was very interested in for years, really looked at that. And once I started taking it apart, I realized that there's Ottoman influence and Jewish influence and the indigenous people influence and the Mediterraneans, the Byzantines and the Romans, they're all here. And that mix, a kind of salad of culture, has actually produced something that is singular and that is only Moroccan. And that's what I find really intriguing. And for me, it's really a celebration of that diversity. And even in the products, I try to do that. I mean, the embroidering brocade onto leather is really, that really comes from a 16th century Ottoman thing in Fez. And the little image that you saw next to it, the gentleman with the last brocade, that's what that's about. And as I look at history, I find different ideas, and there are many different reflections of Morocco. We good? You're very welcome. Thank you. It was a pleasure. Huh?